Right, hello, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
And very nice to see you.
Hi there. Hiya.
John, was the Community Council meeting on last night?
I'm not part of the Community Council. Ron Smith is, if you asked him.
You're not?
No.
I thought you were part of everything.
No, not at all. No, I try to not be involved in as many things as possible. I'm part of Lux. Lux and the Borough Trust.
Right.
And the curling, of course, Abercorn Curling Club. Hi, Eldon. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, all. How are you?
Morning, everyone. And if I can interrupt there just now, that's a call from a McLeod.
Oh, I'm a McLeod.
Lives in Linlithgow.
Oh, which McLeod? Who's that?
Glenn McLeod.
Well,
McLeod,
I don't know where he comes in your lineup. It's not the clan chief anyway. They can give us the Gaelic and they can tell us about the Highlands, etc., etc.
I'm a McLeod. My mother's a Cloud from the Isle of Harris, so that's why I'm asking. Because she passed away last year, but yeah, she would. Yeah, she knew a few kind of other expats from the islands who would speak Gaelic and chat when she was around. So yeah.
Well, I phoned him earlier to say, you know, I'm really interested. If you watch it later after the backup later in the week. And but that was him coming back to me because he never answered. So he might be keen on listening to you. You might even be related.
Oh well, yeah, every possibility. Yeah.
And he was.
I do a lot of ancestry tours, and of course, a lot of people came from the Highlands because of the clearances and things like that. And the kind of person who does the genealogy up in the Isle of Harris, Bill Lawson, he always says, and people always want, he said, don't worry if you came from whatever village, whatever where, don't worry which Donald McDonald you came from, because they're all interrelated and you came from all of them and it's all the same family. So don't worry, if you've got the village, that's fine. So
you've got your family tree sorted out.
Oh, I do, yes. I have to say, I didn't do it myself. It was a wonderful lady, this was years and years ago, from New Zealand, who actually came. She was a relative, came and did it all. And if it's in loads of pieces of paper, because this was the days really before much of the internet. And in fact, it's in a big tube. And if I put it out, I can roll it. It goes from one end of my living room to the other. It's absolutely massive. So
how far back do you get, Mary?
Not as far back as you might think, the mid-1700s, that's a bit as far, yeah, which is quite common because before that it was all word of mouth, and also when the people transcribing the records, they spoke English and they didn't speak Gaelic, and they just kind of wrote what they vaguely thought it might have been. So you tend to lose it then, yeah, unless you were minor royalty, or unless you did something very naughty that merited a mention in a newspaper, you tend to lose it.
And for what it's worth, I can trace my family tree. It's a McCarran back to 1590.
That's fantastic to be able to do that.
I didn't do it, but yeah, there's not as many. There's not so many of us as there are the McLeods.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Yeah.
My uncle used to say he could trace ancestry back to Robert the Bruce's mother.
Robert the Bruce's mother? Well, there you go. Yeah. I mean,
she'd be French, was she, David? Was she a French lady? He was French, I think.
Why I speak French so well. But I don't know how they did it before the internet. It must have been so difficult, you know?
Oh, yeah. Before the internet, you literally had to trail round all the countries and,
Yeah. But I think there's a lot of amateur people doing graveyards as well. They go around the tombstones and write down all the inscriptions and what have you, and catalogue.
Yes.
So there's a lot of information you can get.
It's fabulous. So that's a wee project for anybody that's retired and got a bit of time on their hands. I've been to some various places. My favourite kind of graveyard is Tullyallen graveyard. The local people have all got together and restored it, and all the gravestones are standing upright and they're all cleaned and going way, way back. They're absolutely amazing. It's so if anybody feels like doing that locally, it would be brilliant. The one that I would love to do myself is Abercorn churchyard. I would love to.
There's some nice ones in Abercorn.
Do that, yeah,
Bruce,
my favourite.
We're just talking about graveyards. You came to mind very quickly.
Oh yes.
So how's the arm? Have you had your second shot? Are you a Prescott now?
Did I tell you that my first injection, my arm was quite
It was
sore?
all horrible.
Yeah.
It was fine. There was a story though, because the nurse couldn't get my information up on the screen. On the scream is a Freudian slip. Scream. And she said after 15 minutes, you're not here. We'll need to do this again. And I thought, well, do it again. Do you mean make another appointment, come back? What she meant was, I'll need to put in all your information again into the computer.
I thought you meant put the jag
And
in
after
again.
20 minutes, by then I was as tense as a bar of iron. I was petrified. I was being sent home. So I did feel it going in. But it's fine this morning. I bet you're glad you asked now, John.
That's all right.
Ouch.
Tony, you caught up on my talk on...
Yes.
About,
Yes, I do.
on the grave robbers. Good.
Very good.
And could you not get into Zoom? Was it playing up? No.
I don't know what went wrong.
Castles.
Not getting. Tried for about
That's
half
what
an hour.
you that's
So
I think we call it human error.
it's disappeared.
Oh, there's Lynn.
Anyway, I did it. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed
yeah,
it.
that stage, are you?
Somebody's got a lovely kitchen.
Oh, it seemed to go down then. If go down is the
Right,
right.
I'll see you later on with the fish.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.
There's a few people looked at the video, Bruce. I think there's about 15 the last time I looked.
Great. I've sent it out to a few that I couldn't make it or don't use Zoom, so they are watching it now, which is good.
Yeah.
But
I
can I
don't know
put
if
in there, Bruce? I would love to see, and anybody, I would love to see your grave robbers talk.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
I
Ask him
didn't
nicely,
see
I'll
it. I
send
usually
you-
try and get along when you do museum ones and things like that, but I didn't.
You want,
hear that one. I would love,
drop
I
me
would
an
love to get
email?
hold of it. Yeah,
You send me an email. I'll
Right.
bruceajameson@yahoo.com.
okay, I'll do that. That'd be fabulous because I
No
always
problem.
love your
It
talk.
was very good. We enjoyed it. Yeah, we enjoyed your one you did in the Titanic as well for the
That was
kids.
for
There
kids.
weren't any kids there, but us grown ups enjoyed it.
There were actually more than we thought because some of them were just on audio, I think. They were not showing
Yes.
themselves.
Right.
But also,
Good
I think
morning, everybody.
the schools were
Morning, David. Hi,
Hi,
David.
David. Good morning.
Morning.
Sorry, Bruce.
schools were kind of back by then, I think,
Uh-huh.
at least part-time. So then not a lot of kids were available.
Can I just say that
Hannah couldn't see it when you did it, but she saw it afterwards. She went later and saw it.
Aye.
The beauty of recording things. This time I shall remember to record things. When Bruce did his talk about the resurrectionists, I forgot to switch the recording on, so the poor chap had to do it again the next day. Not the benefit of the tape.
Not all of it, I'm happy to say.
Just the first 5 minutes. I realised 5 minutes in that I'd forgotten to switch the recording on. So this morning you will notice that the recording is on already. So all this is being.
Yeah.
I think you wanted to avoid all the silly chit chat at the beginning. Oh, sorry.
Can I just say that we had a most amazing Zoom meeting, David and I, because we both clicked on the Thursday because we thought that the last meeting was on a Thursday. So there David and I were on split screen having a great chat for about half an hour. That's one you should have recorded because there was all sorts of little secrets coming out of each of our lives, which were really quite.
Well, I hate to mention it, Eldon, but the recording is actually automatic. You have to switch it off to make it not record. Don't worry, I've deleted it.
Oh, it was great. It was amazing how we both discovered we were Commonwealth immigrants in 1967. Me from Bermuda and David from Uganda. And we've our parallel lives coming to Scotland. He came in 72 and I came in 71. It's amazing how the two lives have coincided. I think it would make a great Zoom meeting, David.
Anyway, I can't see you, but that's very kind of you to appear on our screens this morning. We get lots of different characters, And I think yours is going to be especially interesting, especially with the McLeod connection. I'm looking forward to this, having read your little spiel about you, and I don't think you will disappoint us. So, Anne, if you would like to start your talk.
Thank you very much for inviting me along. For those who don't know, I'm Anne from Mary's Meanders Tours. We do local historic tours, and over the past few years we've been really caught up with there's been, you'll be aware, been in the area, a lot of filming going on in the area, and filming and the film world is something I knew absolutely nothing about. Not a clue, was completely strange to me, but we've been very got very caught up with it all, and it's all been quite exciting, and finding out and seeing what's going on about. And it's also interesting, particularly from my point of view, because I love history and I've always loved history, but my introduction to history has often been via historical novels. I love even, you know, fiction, historical fiction, going way, way back to my childhood. Loved all that kind of thing. And often it gave me an introduction to the real history. And then I would go on and find out about it. And that's kind of what this world is to me. It's a world of people will get interested in seeing something on screen, and they say, Visit Scotland have done research, over 40% of people will come to a location based on having seen something on a film or on a TV programme, something like that. So it's something that brings people, it's something that drives our business, and it's fascinating, and it's fascinating to see how it all works. So what I'm going to share with you today is just a tiny wee insight into some of the things that we've seen and we've been involved with, and just explain how it's driven our business, how it's driven things locally, and just the excitement that you get around some of the filming things. So we have a longer version of this and a shorter version. This is going to be the shorter version, if you like, and I'm basically going to focus on just two local locations, Linlithgow and Blackness, for the purposes of this. So Scottish castles on film, we call this. We normally do, we've got Linlithgow, Blackness, and we look at Doon Castle and Craigmillar Castle as well. But for today, it's just Linlithgow and Blackness. So this, how does it start for us? I don't know if you all know what this building is. I should have just said, if anybody's got any questions as we go along, if there's anything specific to a particular slide on what I'm saying, if you pop it in like the chat box, I'll either pick it up then or I'll take it at the end, just depending how it fits and how appropriate it is. But or there's not that many people here. If you really want to shout at me, you could unmute and shout at me then. But this kind of encapsulates what it's all about for us. So this is actually a promotion which was filmed and was organised, and the marketing was all in place, and it was just about to happen. It's a joint promotion with West Lothian Council and Falkirk Council, and it was all about promoting all these film locations that we have around the Forth area. And I think even the first part of it might even have gone out, and then COVID came along, so it was all halted, of course. So this is all there and absolutely ready to go when things are opening up again. So those who don't know, the building in front of me here, this is Midtown Castle on the Hookton estate. Now, I know a lot of people think lovely old building, take my dogs for a walk there or whatever, but this building, because of film tourism, is now an absolute mecca. And it's a mecca because it's where Outlander fans, so if you don't know what Outlander is, and the word phenomenon is used, you know, quite liberally, but it absolutely is a worldwide phenomenon everywhere except possibly here. People here are not that interested in it by and large, or not sure what it's all about, but across the world, and especially in North America, people cannot get enough of Outlander. So Outlander it's a historical drama, that's what I said, fiction, work of historical fiction, huge work of historical fiction. The author, Diana Gabaldon, wrote her first book in 1991. There are 8 books already, and just a couple of weeks ago, she announced that she has finished her 9th book. And these are books of 500 plus pages, so they're not little books, they're huge books. So this is a TV series. You get it here on Virgin. Some of the older episodes are on Netflix, based on these books. And it's all about, it's a fantasy thing. A World War II nurse goes back in time, and she's back in 18th century Scotland. And it's all about, she falls in love with a handsome warrior, and they have all their adventures and such like. And it's all based on the run up to the Battle of Culloden. So you get the history around that. So you will find that most Americans, and this is why you'll find that things like the Culloden battlefield have been having a lot of campaigns against buildings on the site, and things being raised. You will find that any campaigns and anything to do with Jacobites and Culloden or anything like that these days are massively supported, mostly by people from overseas, from Americans and Canadians and Australians, and maybe more bizarrely, Germans and South Americans. Outlander is huge in South America. So people come here for that. But one of the things, and this building, Midtown Castle in Outlander, is Lallybroch. So it's the main family home in the series. So people come flocking here. But once they're here, it's amazing. It often introduces people to Scotland. They've never been, there's lots of particularly Americans, Midwest Americans, that have never been outside their own state, let alone in another country. And these are people in their 60s and 70s, and they go and they get their first passport to come here to Scotland to see these locations that they've seen mostly on this programme. So that's what this is all about, and that's why people are here. And watching, and as I say, we do tours, Outlander tours, simply because they're filming in the area. They filmed here, Linlithgow Palace, Blackness Castle, Hookton House, Craig's Woods. Anytime you see filming going on up there, it's usually Outlander. So lots of things, Calendar House, all around this area, over the river in Couros. So we were seeing the filming going on, and we started doing tours, and it's absolutely mushroomed. And I'll talk a bit about some of the numbers when I come on to talk about Blackness Castle. But that's how we got involved, and we were able to watch in the early days some of the filming going on because it was quiet and people didn't know much about it. These days, the series and the programme has moved on because after the battle, they all went off to America, and the series is now set in America, in North Carolina, and the build-up there and the Revolutionary War and everything there. But they still film it in Scotland, and they're actually filming right now. But the current series is all built sets on big estates, so you don't see them at the locations just the same. But that's by way of background as to why almost filming and castles has become a big thing. So it's Outlander, and it's known as the Outlander effect, and it's had a colossal impact on Scottish tourism, obviously up till recently. Now, this is a bit fuzzy, and I'm just going to say some of the picture quality going through here varies. Some's very good, some's not so good, because some are screenshots and things that have been taken, but it sets the background anyway. So just briefly, Outlander, as I say, is what really I would say started it all, and it was because of the success of Outlander and the filming of Outlander, two things happened. A lot of American productions and film productions wanted to come to Scotland, and on the other side of the coin, Historic Scotland had actually, they'd been reticent to let many productions like these in because they weren't sure how well they'd treat the properties and things for obvious reasons. But Outlander, the crew are well known for really treating the properties and things very sympathetically and doing a good job with that. So I think it gave them encouragement to allow other productions to come in. So for Outlander locally, they used Linlithgow Palace and Blackness, and Historic Scotland properties were Linlithgow, Blackness and Doune Castle. Interestingly enough, Doune Castle was first used, the first big film that took place there was Monty Python and the Holy Grail. And there's a documentary recently, Michael Palin, talking about his life and things. And he said that when they came to film it there, they'd wanted to film it, I can't remember, some other castle, but it was Historic Scotland, and Historic Scotland wouldn't let them film at their castle. And they went to Doune Castle at the time because it was privately owned at that time. So they were allowed to film there. But now Historic Scotland quite happily open every building to anybody who wants to film in it. They've discovered it's a very lucrative revenue stream for them, and also it brings huge visitor numbers afterwards. So just briefly on Outlander, obviously they filmed here at Linlithgow, but for an Outlander, that's just a very arty shot. All they filmed here, and all you'll recognise from Outlander is this the entranceway. They filmed one of the corridors inside as well, but from this one simple entranceway you have hordes of people coming here to Linlithgow Palace. They see it as it was some very vital scenes in the programme, but interestingly enough it's used as this prison called Wentworth Prison. But they didn't only use Linlithgow Palace. When you see courtyard scenes inside, they didn't use the courtyard in Linlithgow Palace. And one of the reasons they gave for not using the courtyard at Linlithgow was because they couldn't really disguise the fountain. And the fountain, they said, you know, people wouldn't be able to see it as something else because it's such a recognisable fountain, which was interesting because when we come on to the Outlaw King later, you'll see that that didn't seem to bother them too much. So when they needed courtyard scenes for Outlander, and they were using it for hanging scenes and not very nice scenes, they actually used Carlisle Castle. In season 1, everything was filmed in Scotland apart from this one bit that was filmed in Carlisle, and nobody seems to have noticed that Linlithgow Palace is blonde sandstone and Carlisle Castle is red sandstone. But nobody seems to have notice the difference. So there we go. But in the minds of fans and people visiting, Linlithgow Palace is this Wentworth prison, so it's very firmly on the Outlander locations map, so people come here. So as I said, you know, it's really what kind of started it. I'll just move through these because unless you're an Outlander fan, you'll be not interested in these, but these are important scenes. Sorry about this being fuzzy. I don't know why we've ended up with a fuzzy version of this because we've got some wonderful photos, nice clear ones of the fountain. But as I was just saying there, they decided not to use the courtyard at Linlithgow because of that. But yeah, I'm going to come on to Outlaw King. And in Outlaw King, they do use the courtyard, and they obviously had no problems with the fountain, despite the fact that they were a couple of hundred years earlier. They didn't seem to have a problem with having the James V fountain in their Robert the Bruce film. There you go. So some people do bother and some don't. So I'm going to come on now to Outlaw King, and quite a lot of this is going to talk really about Outlaw King. So I know some of you are involved with the church and things like that, so I know some of you might or may have been involved or might have seen some of the filming going on when it was taking place. It was certainly quite interesting, kind of getting used to seeing men wandering around in chainmail with their Costa coffees and things like that, which was quite funny to see at the time. But it was really interesting to watch kind of how they took this, which was supposedly an accurate historical story, and how they portrayed it on screen. And I have to say one thing, talking about castles and film, the castles really are shown in fabulous light in the Outlaw King, and locations and things. One of the locations in the Outlaw King, and it's only in it for a couple of minutes, is a location that we go to regularly, and it's Tullybarden Chapel near Gleneagles, gone out of my head, Gleneagles name. So and it's just, if you go there now, it's just an empty shell, so it's just an empty chapel. And in the Outlaw King, they put in all the pews, so it was funny to see it. It was nice to see it. Oh, that's what it would have been like, even though it was only there for a few seconds before carnage took place. But you did see it as it would have been back in the day, which was quite interesting. So Outlaw King, if you haven't seen it, it's on Netflix. It's a film about Robert the Bruce, big Netflix production. Robert the Bruce played by Chris Pine, and it was filmed, a lot of the filming took place here around Linlithgow. So they filmed in the church. So the church was used for Robert the Bruce's wedding in St Michael's, and they obviously, most of you would know the inside of St Michael's now. They took out all the pews, so it would be as it was back in the 1300s, and they filmed the wedding here, and they also filmed the funeral of Robert the Bruce's father here. Now, after, and I'm going to show you just a couple of props later, after filming, local organisations, things were offered a number of props from this film, and we have some of them, and there's quite a lot of them in Linlithgow, and they did offer props appropriate to different places. Like in Dunfermline Abbey, they filmed a huge feast with Edward I, and the centrepiece of that feast was 2 huge swans. So Dunfermline were offered the swans, they have the swans. So in Linlithgow we have a number of different things, but we were offered, and we have this, the huge funeral bier that was used. So these props are stored, well, they were stored in the old library. I'm not quite sure if there's, I think they might have been moved somewhere else. I'm not sure where they are now. But we have this huge funeral bier, and we don't really know what to do with it. So if anybody has any bright ideas, maybe when we eventually get going with the marches again, but everybody will have forgotten about this by then. If it had been shortly afterwards, might have been quite good, could have put in a float using all these props and things. But anyway, we have, these things are in Linlithgow if anybody is interested in them. So Linlithgow was used in a few different scenes, and one of the main things it was used for Edward's base. It was used as Perth Castle, and that's when the courtyard was used inside. They've not made any attempts to cover up the fountain or anything like that, but you do see it in all its glory. So it's lovely to be able to see it. That's just seen in there, and Edward II. And another couple of scenes that I loved, and I thought they showed Linlithgow in fantastic light again. So this is the crowning of Robert the Bruce, which obviously would have taken place at Scone, but they filmed it just here at the West Range, just on the peel, just on the grass here at Linlithgow Palace. And the lady doing the crowning here, this is Isabella Mcduff, and she'd come rushing. Isabella Mcduff, she was the daughter and the sister of the Earl of Fife, and they historically crowned the kings. So she was determined to do that, despite the fact that she was actually married to a common, and Robert the Bruce had come here swiftly to Scone to be crowned after he'd murdered John Comyn in Greyfriars Church in Dumfries. So she was married to John Comyn's cousin. So despite that, she came and she took on the traditional role of crowning Robert the Bruce, and she paid the penalty for that, and I'll come on to that a little bit later. But if you just remember that it's her that will feature in something that that appears later on, where the film strayed from reality. So these are just some of the shots of the filming here. Okay, and this is one of my absolute favourite shots. I just love this because it's a beautiful nighttime shot over Linlithgow Loch. I think it's just amazing. I love seeing all those little lights and things like this. This is Robert the Bruce, and this is his wife, Elizabeth de Burgh. I don't know if everybody's seen the film or not, but as I say, it's available on Netflix if you want to see it now. So as I said, after the filming, we were offered the props, or all organisations, lots of local organisations in different places were offered a chance to take some of the props away. So this is Govan Town Hall, where they were just storing all these props afterwards. So you basically went along. I didn't actually go because I was away in London at the time. Emma went with Stuart Ness from Visit West Lothian. They went along to Govan Town Hall basically with a clipboard and a pen and paper and made a shopping list of what they would like. That's what you did. And then afterwards they told you what you were getting. So there was various things, lots of, and that was one of the mood boards, the storyboards that they were using for Linlithgow as well, of that. And these are the huge balls that they would fire from the trebuchet. Now the trebuchet, they actually used the big firing thing, that is stored, that some of the stuff was given to Duncarron Fort. I don't know if you're aware of Duncarron Fort. It's a medieval fort reconstructed, built by an amazing group of volunteers up at Carron Reservoir. So they got a lot of the stuff. So they got these. So these are as light as anything. And these were the one thing you didn't get with the costumes. They weren't giving away the costumes, for a shame. But just before we move on to Blackness Castle, I'm just going to show you a couple of the props that I have here. So I'll just come off. Yep, we'll see this here. So this is one of the swords, right? So, you know, proper looking sword. It's even got a little notch out of it there. You can see that, okay? I'm going to just, I would unshare the screen, but I'm frightened I don't get it back on again. But you'll see, I mean, they're very, but I can run my hands along that. And it's kind of made of a kind of rubbery. You can see that, you can move about. So they look really realistic from a distance, but they're made of kind of rubber. I have a big crossbow, but it's away at the moment because it's slightly damaged. And when you take off the end, what it appears to be made of, and this is where I am not technical at all, it appears to be made of, you know, that kind of foam, expanding foam you can put into cracks. Appears to be, I'm sure there's some technical name for that, but it appears to be made from that. So it's amazing, but from a distance, you know, you can kind of twist that. It looks so realistic. I'm actually going to leave my other prop to the end so I can finish screen sharing because it really needs a full screen to see. So wait for that and I will show you when we get to the end because it's quite something. Okay, so for the moment we will come on to that. So that was Linlithgow Palace. So Linlithgow was used for Outlander and Outlaw King. Strangely enough, it wasn't used at all for Mary, Queen of Scots. The Mary, Queen of Scots film, they didn't use Linlithgow Palace for that at all. They did use Blackness Castle, which you might think strange, and I did think was very strange at the time, but we'll come on to that in just a minute. So Blackness, you know, I love this picture because it shows it being all tranquil, and usually it's blowing a gale and the sea's all wild, but that was one day when it was tranquil. So Mary, Queen of Scots, the film that was out a couple of years ago, and you can get this on Netflix as well now if you want to see it, with Saoirse Ronan and Margot Robbie. So they used, people often ask, and it's a question they ask all the time, do you have a problem with these films and these things because they're not accurate and they have things in them that are not accurate? I actually don't have a problem with that because, I mean, some things, there's a TV series called Rain about Mary, Queen of Scots, and I did try to watch that because some people say they watch it, and I lasted 15 minutes and I couldn't manage any more of that. It's like it's a teenage romp through France, loosely disguised as Mary, Queen of Scots. But so there's some things we draw the line at, but things like the film and films and things to do with Mary nearly always have Mary and Elizabeth meeting, which never happened in real life. But it adds to the drama, and by and large, as long as the story is told, you know, to a reasonable degree, I don't have a problem with it because that's how I originally got into history. By watching films, I watched, you know, the Mary Queen of Scots film, the Vanessa Redgrave and Glenda Jackson one way back, and you think, oh, that's fascinated with that, and you go off and you find out the real history. And if it introduces people to history, I think that's fantastic. And so I don't have a problem, as a lot of purists did. So there is issues. So I don't have a problem with that with this film. I do have one big problem with this film. And I really didn't understand this at all. And I did hear we went to the premiere. This just we got to go to the premiere. We got really involved with this. We got so involved with the marketing. We did the premiere. We took out a lot of bloggers. We were asked to take them out, and I mean, as part of that, we were given access and we were given tours. We were shown all the artifacts in the National Museum of Scotland. It was when the Mary Queen of Scots letter was on display at the National Library. We were taken in and given tours. So it was amazing. We were able to absolutely immerse ourselves in the whole thing. We were kind of a bit disappointed that the film wasn't the huge success we hoped it might have been, and would have encouraged loads of people to come here for Mary Queen of Scots. Unfortunately, more people still come here for Outlander than they do for Mary Queen of Scots. But anyway, the thing that I struggled with this film, really struggled with, was that this is Blackness Castle. So this is Saoirse Ronan as Mary Queen of Scots. And this is supposed to be Holyrood Palace, okay? So they deliberately made, I don't know if you've seen the film, but in the film, all the English scenes are all bright and airy and light, and all the Scottish scenes are dark and dreary and dismal. And I really, really had a problem with that. But apart from that, you do see, you know, the castle, the main castle they have here is Blackness. So you're not seeing lovely castles with, you know, painted ceilings and tapestries and such like. You're seeing, as I say, Blackness. So this is Emma. We quite like to, you know, recreate scenes from things. And this is Saoirse Ronan and Mary Queen of Scots. The point of showing this slide, it's not so much from the film. She's always dressed in blue, so she stands out against all the black, dismal black background. But the point here is to show this rust mark. We always say this is the most famous rust mark in the world now, because this is in the tower, the central tower in Blackness Castle, and it's where the chains were for the well, the buckets, and you can see it really clearly in everything that's filmed in Blackness Castle. You need to start looking out, you see these rust marks here. So this is the Mary Queen of Scots, as I say, was filmed in Blackness, not Linlithgow at all. And this is it here. So you see everything's dark, I mean, they're all dressed in black, and it's all dark and dull and grey, and that was their choice to do that. So so the courtyard here, so the courtyard, so Blackness was also used, the courtyard here, for one of the main scenes, a bit fuzzy, in Outlander. It was used quite a bit in Outlander. This is the hero, Jamie, being flogged here, one of their main scenes here at Blackness. And so, as I say, people come, Blackness Castle and Doon Castle are the two that have benefited most from what they call the Outlander effect. Blackness Castle, before Outlander came along, it was getting visitors in the region of maybe 15, 20,000 a year. It wasn't even open, you know, all week, all the time. Before COVID came along, those visitor numbers had pushed through 80,000. So, and Doon Castle numbers, they were 30 to 40,000, and they were, last count, they were about 120,000. So unbelievable, the rise in numbers coming to these places. And of course, people don't just come to the one, they go to various different places, and fabulous. In some cases, it depends. Some people are on the rush around tours, how the impact to the old local economy is different. But for our Outlander, our day tours, we actually get, well, in the past, don't know what we'll do in the future, we would get people to come on the train to Linlithgow. So we would be encouraging them to come here, and we would start and finish our tours in Linlithgow itself. So it's really trying to put Linlithgow in the local area on the map. We need to just see how things develop as we go forward. So that was Mary Queen of Scots and Outlander, and Outlaw King they filmed here as well. At this point, they're supposed to be Kildrummy Castle. They're escaping from there. That's what's going on there. And they also used it then. This is quite a grainy shot, but here they're in the cranes, they're putting up a cage. So this cage, and in the film, in the Outlaw King, in this cage, they have put, this is Robert the Bruce's wife, they've put in this cage in the Outlaw King, but in real life, it was actually the lady you saw earlier, Isabella, and Robert the Bruce's sister were actually put in cages and castles at Roxburgh Castle, and Isabella was put at Berwick Castle, and that was their punishment for supporting Bruce. But in this film, it's Bruce's wife that they put in the cage, suspended over the side of Blackness Castle there, and that is the actual cage itself. So that was our big, our quick run through how you see the castles on film. And before I take questions, I'm going to show you my other. If anybody's at all squeamish and doesn't like anything very gruesome, now's your chance to turn away, okay? So in the Outlaw King, and of course in the time of Robert the Bruce, what did they do, and what did they do to William Wallace? So of course he was hung, drawn and quartered, and his head was displayed at various parts. Well, not his head wasn't displayed in various parts, his body parts were displayed around the country. And they put his head on a spike. So here we go. Are we ready for this? I'm going to stand up. Let you see my beautiful, beautiful severed head, okay? There we go. So this is a severed head from the Outlaw King. Now it's made of kind of rubbery material. It feels disgusting. It's got stuff in the hair. Even down here, you can see it's got all the grizzle and all the gory bits where it came off. So that's our kind of, yes, Emma, those who know Emma, colleague, Emma will not have anything to do with this. When we did an exhibition at Visit Scotland Expo, last time it was on live, I said, we're going to put this on display. No, we can't put that. And I said, yes, we are, because nobody else will have anything like this on display. They've all got beautiful castles and lovely scenery and things. So we did put it on display, and we had more publicity and more photos with all the journalists and all the top people visiting than anybody else, because it was completely unusual. So there we have. So we have the severed head. So that's our prop. So that I keep this inside several different bags in a cupboard so that I don't accidentally come across it at any point. And I'd be terrified. We do have, I mean, we have a big cardboard cutout of Jamie, the main character from Outlander. So that's something that lots of people like to look upon. But I had it in the house at one point in the spare bedroom, and you would forget, and you'd open the door and there'd be this strange man in your room. So you would be terrified, even when it's somebody good looking. So definitely don't want to be coming across a severed head when I open a cupboard. So it's away in several bags. But it's fascinating, and it's so interesting just to see how they do all these things. So I hope you find that something a wee bit different from, you know, the usual kind of the history or general talk that we do, just looking slightly at things from a different point of view and just sharing what we've been part of the past few years. So I'm happy if anybody's got any questions. Hi.
Very interesting talk, and many thanks for taking the time to talk to us. I visit Curtis quite a lot.
Yeah.
Although in lockdown it wasn't open for business apart from sitting in the main square enjoying the sunshine. At Curtis they have an Outlander centre at the photographic shop. Do you know what I mean?
Well, yes, I absolutely do know what you mean, and I have to tell you that.
So my point is there not something that Linlithgow, in a business sense, should be looking at establishing?
Yes, well, we've talked about that kind of thing over the years. Just to mention in passing, that photography centre at Curtis, that was built up. You know, that building was just empty and being used for nothing, and that was open. But unfortunately, Graham, the photographer, died just recently. So
that's right.
He fell on a mountain taking photographs. So, so things are going to change there. But I mean, that is Curtis is a perfect example of capitalising on something that's happened in your village, because that centre opened. There are now three cafes. The Bessie's Tea Room, that was closed when we first started going. That wasn't open. That's open. There's another 2 tea rooms. There's that centre, and lots of visitors go. There's a pottery, a gift shop. So they really have taken it on board. Another village that's really kind of capitalises Falkland. And that again was specifically Outlander. A lot of it was filming there, and they've got various cafes and craft shops and tea rooms and things have all opened, all embracing that. And it's something we've talked about ad nauseum for years. We did a presentation a good few years ago now in the Borough Halls and invited all sorts of local businesses. In fact, Graham, who set up the gallery in Curtis, he came and spoke to all the local businesses about what you could do and how you could drive your business and things like that. But you can, as you say, take the horse to water, but you can't make them drink. So, but it's absolutely something that we've said over and over and over again. Something should be done, and things should be done. I mean, well, I'm not going to go on, John. I'll know it.
Okay, thanks for that.
Hi, good morning. I know you said that you don't have a big problem with movies showing another version, but do you explain to your clients? Do you?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right? So you give gosh. Life history.
Oh God. Oh well, we do absolutely. This is the thing. So Outlander tours are an interesting type of thing. So you have people, well, there's one person, Andy the Highlander, who's a lovely man, dresses up in all the gear. He's been an extra in it, charges around the country and all that, and has a big following, but it's very superficial. So you have people that want that, the superficial level. As one of my friends said to me, you have a different quality of clientele. You have the people who are a bit more interested, and absolutely everybody that comes on one of our tours gets the real history of wherever we are. To the extent, I mean, and I'm passionate about sharing, because that's what I think it's all about. And it does, a lot of people have come on Outlander tours, have come back again. They're really interested in the real history of Scotland. They find out a lot more, quite a lot discover their Scottish ancestry, and that gets them going. And that we do a lot of ancestry tours, and quite passionate about that. And things like, and Outlander is the big one, because people that come and do a Mary Queen of Scots tour are generally interested in Mary Queen of Scots anyway. That doesn't tend to be people who are on a very superficial level. The ones we're talking about that it might be is more Outlander, and perhaps something. Not many of our over 60s ladies have seen the Outlaw King. People don't come for that. So it is Outlander. So it brings them here in the first place, and they get very interested. I say some of them, but I have to say they get very interested specifically in the Jacobites. And you would almost think the Jacobites is Scottish history, and there isn't anything else to Scottish history. Interestingly, we've been doing a lot of virtual tours and online tours and things like that. And it's surprising, people are more likely to have heard of Jacobites and Bonnie Prince Charles. They kind of know vaguely. I'm quite surprised how unknown Scottish history is. It's been a bit of a revelation. They kind of know about the Jacobites and things. Very few know about Mary Queen of Scots, which has surprised me to quite a large degree.
Thank you, that's great. My mind is at rest.
One of the places we go is Tibermore Church up near Crieff, because Outlander was filmed there. A scene, and people just like to go there and get their pictures taken like they're seen from Outlander. But when they go there with me, they get the whole story of how one of the aisles was built by the Poolers of Perth for their workers and things like that. And I don't think any other guide tells anybody that. But if you're with me, you get everything. So yeah,
how people relate from the fantasy, if you like, to the reality. And it was just, you know, they maybe come with preconceived ideas.
Yeah.
Is there any of them show any disappointment that was the scene that they had in their mind, but it's not exactly what they thought? Or I don't know if that's the case.
Let me think. Well, possibly not from that point of view. What it tends to be is, from an Outlander point of view, you have book readers and TV series watchers, and things don't. Like what's in the book wasn't necessarily in the TV, you know, things like that. And people have a bit of disappointment with things like that. But no, I think people find some of the, I always say to people, the real history is often more fascinating than the fiction.
Yeah.
You know, and really they like, as I say, there's different people. There's hundreds of Outlander tours going around the country, and you can just jump on a bus and somebody will tell you all sorts of nonsense. And for example, I remember one time I was in Doon Castle, and I was there with a group, and we were in the kitchens at Doon Castle, and I was listening. There was another guy talking, and he was talking complete nonsense. Complete nonsense. And I was sitting, and I almost felt like saying, that's just right. And then I looked at the people, and the people were having the best time. They were having a fantastic time. And I thought, and to say, I do have a problem with this. I can't really reconcile this in my mind, because I want people to know the truth and the real history. But then I thought, who am I to spoil somebody's great time? They're having a great time. So,
yeah,
you know, I actually have a wee internal struggle with that one in my head, because you know, but I know there's lots of people who they're basically actors, so they're out there and they're entertaining. So people are getting the entertainment. Yes, but I have had particularly some online discussions, shall we say, verbal to and fro's with people who are absolutely adamant about something, and you go, well, no, that's just not right, you know. So anyway,
Nick,
can I just suggest to you, and that you're being a bit hopeful, because when you look at the what's been done to Macbeth by Shakespeare, no amount of telling the actual history is going to persuade most people that he didn't have any children, and two, he murdered Duncan in his bed.
Well,
I mean, that's fact now. That's just because it's in, I don't know, Outlander or Mary Queen of Scots or whatever. I don't see how you can ever fight against that, because most won't listen to you.
Well, I am actually having that very discussion with somebody at the moment who's adamant that she's descended from Macbeth. And she's got this convoluted thing about how Macbeth changed his name, or somebody changed their name to Finlay. Anyway, this is ongoing at the moment. It's been ongoing for quite some time. And she is coming to Scotland at some point. but we're having that discussion at the moment. She's desperately trying to prove one thing to me, and I'm trying to prove the other opposite to her. But anyway, it's quite lively. So, and we do get that. We get that a lot with that. Yeah, with ancestry, particularly all the people that think they're descended. I've had another one just came in yesterday, and I'm going, no, I know this family. You do not have that connection, you know. So, but well. Yeah, you just, I mean, it's different things. I mean, sometimes we've had people visit and they believe one thing. We'd one years ago, a Mary Queen of Scots thing, and I said to the lady, well, you believe this, this is what I think. I'm happy to take you out, but you're not going to win me round to your arguments. I guess I'm not going to win you round to my, and we accepted that, you know. We just have to do that. But by and large, we see it, you know, it's fun, but it's educating as well. And as I say, it gets people interested in Scotland, which is great. And from our point of view, if we can get them away from Edinburgh Castle, you know, to see in other things, that's great. And that's one really good thing about Outlander. If you do an Outlander tour, you're not going to the standard locations, you're going to different places, which is really good, and you learn a bit of a different history as well.
What do you know about the film industry's route for film locations and deciding where they might want to film? Do you know anything about that, or is it just potluck?
I don't know any great detail about it. I do know that Scotland is and in place. There's quite a lot of productions filming at the moment. I have no inside track. I know a few people who are kind of on the outskirts of it, but it's definitely a popular place to film, and they have started filming in the new production facility they've opened down at Leith. So they are filming in there, and the Outlander studio is used when Outlander are not in it at Cumbernauld. They've used it for other things as well. So filming in Scotland, film production in Scotland is absolutely growing. It's a place that they want to be filming now. I'm not aware of any at the moment that are going to be using castles. I think the kind of historical bit, that was a few years ago, and they're moving on to more fantasy and other things now that are using the wide landscapes and things like that. So yeah, I don't specifically know of any at the moment.
Well, and that was absolutely fascinating. I found it very interesting.
Thank you.
Lucky enough to have seen most of the films you were talking about. I think it's, and of course I feel with Bruce, I'm in a tone like you about the position of accuracy. Is it better not to make the film at all unless it's accurate, or is it better to make it with the inaccuracies? I think it's quite funny that I've watched a bit of Outlander, and it's sci-fi, you know, going back in time, and yet in some ways I think it's more accurate than a lot of the other films. Like the Mary Queen of Scots films are always rubbish. They always arrive in the beach of Leith instead of, I mean, Leith was a functioning port for about 200 years. But she always arrives in a beach, you know. And the last Mary Queen of Scots, why they didn't use Stirling Palace instead of Blackness, which was a prison. You just have to wonder, you know. But there was so much to think about in it, and found it very interesting altogether. And I hope all power to Melbo, and certainly I'm sure, like Bruce, very reassured that when you take your tourists around, you point out the historical inaccuracy. But like you, I think the film industry I'm really impressed by it. I was associated with St. Michael's Church when they were using it. And there was one morning I came down for open church, and there was a wall outside the palace, and it just looked so authentic. And I thought, I've never noticed that wall before. It hadn't been there yesterday, and it's totally convincing. And they treated the church very well, I think, as far as what I've heard too. So thank you very much. And seeing your ancestry, perhaps I should say Gleva Agus Tapole, and that's how I've been using my lockdown.
Duolingo, yeah.
No, learning Gaelic. Recommend it to you all. It's intended for school children, which is just about where I am, you know. But thank you very much. I'm sure we'll all be tempted to join you in one of your meanders once we get back to.
Oh, well, that would be lovely, yes. Okay, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for having me. Okay, thank you.
Thanks again, Anne. The recording should be up tomorrow, hopefully. If I can get that done, I'll give a link to you, Anne, as well as to the others in case you want to make use of it.
Yep.
And in 2 weeks' time, we've got one Frank Clement talking to us, and his subject is called Sub 4. I haven't the faintest idea what Sub 4 means. Does anybody know what Frank's going to be talking about?
Oh, I know exactly what Frank will be talking about.
Okay, you tell us then what Frank will be talking about.
Athletics, 4 minute mile.
Sub 4, yeah.
Yeah, so
Okay, right. Fine. Obviously, there's gaps in my knowledge.
yeah.
So yeah, I look forward to a talk about sub 4 minute mile athletics in 2 weeks' time. Same thing, 10 o'clock on Wednesday, the whatever 2 weeks' time Wednesday is, the 12th of May. And after that, there'll be one more, and then we're going to have a break for the summer. And hopefully after that, we will actually start meeting physically again. I really hope in the autumn, but we just don't know. If we can't meet physically, we'll go back to having meetings on Zoom, I'm sure. So thank you all for coming, and I'll see you in 2 weeks' time.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.